As he has prospered there, your title. I really, as a joke, started just to put give. Because we just saw all the good works that are going on, and we saw that we did more than came in last year. And the joke was the fact that that's usually how we encourage giving. As a church, when we stand up in the pulpit and we talk about money, we go to the story of the widow and her 2 mites, and we try to shame people into the fact that she gave everything she had to give. Or we go to the idea that, hey, we're in such a much better system. It's a non-tithe system, so we ought to be more giving because we're more blessed. I want to try something different this morning. We're going to connect it to our theme. We're going to connect it to the idea that we are to have, based on our journey with Christ Jesus last year, hearts that are on fire for God. And then rolling into this year, the result is hands that go to work, hands that are busy, hands that are doing the work God has called us to do. And I want you to think about on the heels of getting to know Jesus, Acts 10:38 describes him as what? Anybody know it? Going about doing good. All right, he had active hands that made a difference in the world around us. And one of the ways that we participate in that doing of good and having active hands is our giving. It is God funneling blessings through us into His world so that we make a difference, so that we change the lives of the people around us, that we go about doing good. All right, so here's how we're going to approach this differently. Paul has 2 letters in the New Testament that he addressed the church at Corinth. Within those letters, he addresses giving both times. So he writes to them in 1 Corinthians, and this is interesting because I'm going to show you some things go on between 1 Corinthians and 2 Corinthians that he then comes back and readdresses that idea in reference to what he'd already told them and to what has been happening in the time in between. And we're going to use those texts. We're going to use them in the order he wrote them because, let's be logical, that's the order he wrote them in. So there was a reason for it. So we start with 1 Corinthians chapter 16, the reading that we had. Verse 1, Paul said, I want you to make sure that you take up a regular collection on the first day of the week for the purpose of the saints. Now you're going to see that phrase, we're going to come back to this several times. And at the end, I'll go back and remind you what ones that we noted, and we're going to put them together. But note here that the primary purpose of Paul telling them to give was to meet the needs of the saints. It's a very specific situation going on at the time that he's writing these 2 letters. So a specific primary purpose. Note also that he tells them, this is not the first time I've done this. I'm telling you the same thing that I told Galatia. So it's not just a local thing in Corinth. It's not just an individual thing because he's going to address them individually, but it's a congregational thing, and it was for all of the churches. He is passing this message around from place to place so that all the congregations are in tune. They're doing the same thing on the first day of the week. Since it's an individual thing in that my household, my wife and I, determine what we're going to purpose, how we're going to cheerfully give, how much. Why does he say, do it on the first day of the week? I mean, he's saying, let each one of you do this. Could I not do it on a Tuesday? Could I not do it on a Wednesday? Why the first day of the week? It's individual giving. It's a free will gift. It's not a tithe. It's not that kind of command. So why a specific day? It's because when they were assembled. Now notice how Paul works this together. The importance of them being together and putting this collection that they have purposed into a community pot on the first day of the week is trifold. The first of it goes back to verse 1. It's a congregational instruction. So John's doing it separately, David's doing it separately, Marcus is doing it separately, I'm doing it separately, but the instructions were written, chapter 1, verse 1 of the book of Corinthians, to the church at Corinth. So they're doing it collectively. Number 2, he said, I want you to put aside and save. Now let's be honest. If I don't, whether it's a reference to the church or it's a reference to my retirement fund or if it's a reference to making my car payment, if I don't put it aside and save it, what happens to it? It gets spent. All right, we whip out the card, we spend it, and it's gone, and at the end of the month, we don't even know where it went. So he said, I need you to make an effort to put this aside collectively, save it in a bunch on a specific day that you know's coming, so that you're purposing in your heart ahead of time to do it. Do it individually, so that when you're assembled and that collection is pooled, now watch how Paul reasons this out, you do not have to make a collection when I come. Paul said there's going to be a day in the future, and he doesn't tell them exactly when. He said, I need to do some other things. It'll be when God allows me to make it there. But he said, when I arrive, I am not going to have the time for you to run from house to house and collect everybody's individual or family contribution and get it together. I need to be able to make one stop. Why? Because it's for the saints, and as we go on with 2 Corinthians in chapters 8 and 9, and we connect it to the book of Romans, and we connect it to the book of Acts, there are people in need who need the money today. They don't need it 6 months from now, so that I don't need to have to wait on you to get it together. I need to be able to come to town, pick it up, you send me on my way. So bring it together every week so that it's in one place and you know where it's at, and I can come through and pick it up. Now I want you to do your giving, your purposing as He may prosper. There it is. File that one away. We'll come back to it. But a heads up, we're going to come back to it because I think we misuse it and take it out of its context. Verse 3, pool it together, make it a congregational thing, because I'm going to mention Macedonia's churches, I'm going to mention Galatia's churches, I'm going to mention Corinth's churches, as this is coming from them. And when I get there, you're going to give it to me, and we will send it on when I arrive. I may get to accompany him. That's not unusual. Paul often would collect this stuff and then go with it. When writing to Rome in Romans chapter 15, verses 22 through 29, he tells them, I am going to make a delivery. I want to come to Rome. I want to visit you. I've been doing everything I can to get to Rome, but I have other things that are more pressing, and one of them in that context is I have to get to Jerusalem and deliver this money. The money he picked up from, notice, not individuals, but from the region of Macedonia, the region of Achaia, the congregations that were meeting there. And in Acts 24 and verse 17, we see him at least making one of those deliveries. It says he's there to bring his alms to the people, to the church, to put under the oversight of the elders in Jerusalem who are going to use it for the needy. Notice some other details. It's a specific collection in Romans for the poor in Jerusalem. Come back to that. He said, I want you to be pleased to do that. They were pleased to do that. So it's a heart thing. It's a voluntary gift in that way. Now we go back to chapter 16 of 1 Corinthians in case you turned over to Romans. And in verse 5 there he said, by the way, I need to stop on my way to see you in Macedonia. Where did we just see the word Macedonia? We saw it in Romans. So we now have an order, we have a timeline for what Paul is collecting and moving from one place to the other, ultimately to get it to Jerusalem. He's going to go to Macedonia, to Achaia, to Corinth, to Jerusalem, and then when he gets all of that done and drops that money off there to meet their needs, then he said, you know what, Rome, I'm going to be able to finally come and see you. So, a pressing need that is preventing him from getting to Rome as early as he wanted to do the work there. That's important. That order is important because watch. A couple of reasons. Number one, he is making a circuit to gather it all at once and deliver it. We think about our missionaries. We think about that chunk of the budget that is for the spiritual and the physical needs of people around our world. They don't need to be chasing that money all over the world. They need to be delivering it, taking and putting it into use, using it in the field. And so 1 Corinthians 16 becomes applicable in 2026, where we bring it together, put it in the hand of the elders, they choose which missionaries it's going to, and that it's available to them when they need it. It's also important because watch what comes after 1 Corinthians. That's one of those duh questions. It's 2 Corinthians. Hopefully we all got that right. Chapter 8, verses 1 through 15. So you're flipping now to 2 Corinthians, remembering that it's the next letter he wrote to them, to the same people, following the heels of, right at the end of 1 Corinthians, take up your collection on a weekly basis. In that next letter, he tells them how the trip to Macedonia went. What's he say? I'm in circuit to reach you. I have some time to write, so let me tell you about this trip. Let me tell you about how it went when I arrived in Macedonia. I'm going to tell you about my stopover. Verse 2 of 2 Corinthians 8, he said, they rocked it. He said, I got to Macedonia, and in any one of those words suffices. Ordeal, affliction. He puts them together. He said, in the midst of their great ordeal of affliction, things were not going well in Macedonia. They're at a point of deep poverty. We're looking at poverty in Jerusalem that needs to be met. Macedonia is having some of their own issues. He said they gave and they gave and they gave above and beyond what they should have been able to do. An abundance of joy. It was not begrudging. They weren't worried about what they were taking it away from. They were worried about where it was going and what it could do. So we connect that to Romans. They were pleased to do it. He said they were begging for the opportunity. I'm going to pause right there. When was the last time one of us, including myself, went to the elders out of poverty and begged to do more financially to meet somebody else's needs? Never in my case. Have you? And it ended up, he says, overflowing in wealth. They gave what they couldn't give. They gave liberally. Above and beyond, verse 3 says. It very much reminds me of Exodus 36, where Moses finally looks at the children of Israel and says, you got to stop giving. There's enough here, and you don't need to be giving more than that. That's kind of how Paul's describing Macedonia. They're giving above and beyond. On their own, free will. Paul said, I didn't tax them. He said, I didn't tell them how much they needed to give. They were begging us for this opportunity. Why? For the saints. That very specific reason. They wanted to meet the needs of their brothers and sisters somewhere else. So that in verse 5 he says, you know what? It shocked us. It shocked us in a good way. We were shocked how much they gave. And I love this part. Paul says, you know what? They were not trying to make up for their shortcomings. It's kind of a paraphrase there. What does he say? He said they gave themselves first. You know, sometimes the collection plate comes by, or I walk by it back there and I remember, you know what? I didn't do anything for Christ in the last 3 months, so I'll put an extra $5 in there and let somebody else do it for me. Missionary comes and we feel kind of guilty that I'm not going across the world, so I give him an extra $10 to go do my work for me. Macedonia said that wasn't the way it worked. Or Paul said that wasn't the way it worked in Macedonia. They did the work first and then gave beyond that. So it's a hard thing. So verse 6, now we're going back to talking about what's going on in Corinth. Paul said, I sent Titus ahead. So remember I said I was coming and we're in between letters, and so I sent Titus in between to encourage you. You're doing all these other things well. And I think sometimes we miss that. This is a side note. I think sometimes we miss that about Corinth. We look at this church that is a hot mess. We look at this church that has so much going on, and yet Paul says, you know what, there are a lot of things you're doing well. And so we can have problems and still be doing things well. But don't miss this. Opportunity. He said, you're doing all this other well, but you need to fulfill your responsibility here. Now make sure you catch this. Is it free will? Absolutely. It's not a tithe. Paul is not tying their hands and beating this out of them. Was it expected of them to? Yes. Why? Paul said, because this was your idea. So I'm sending Titus ahead to encourage you because this was your idea. I need to make sure that you have the encouragement to finish it, that there are no excuses, that when I get there, you're not like, oh man, we didn't get it done. Not only that, notice this idea of no excuses. He said, it's not about how much you do not have. It's not about your level of poverty. And that was going on in Macedonia when they were giving. And that's another, we'll come back to that moment. 13 through 15. Notice, and you can go to Acts chapter 2, 43 through 45 and connect it. And you can go to Acts chapter 4, verses 34 and 35. The idea of the church at Corinth sending money to Jerusalem, puddled with the money from Macedonia and Achaia and these other places, Paul says, is to even the playing field. So that we raise the standard of living for our brethren. Remember Acts chapter 2, 43? They were coming together and had all things in common. Level playing field. Acts 4, 34 and 35, there was no one among them who had a need because they're all bringing it. Now hold on to that one too. So we go to chapter 9. Again, he says, it's superfluous for me to have to write this. I shouldn't have to do this, but why am I going to? Because it seems in the way he writes that he's almost heard a little rumor that they made this big promise, we're going to give this money, we're going to be ready when you get there. And Titus has gone to encourage them, and it's almost like he gets this rumor that they're not quite ready for his arrival. So he tells them, I keep telling everyone, you're ready. Because that was your idea. I'm spreading your name around the world that Corinth's going to give. Corinth's going to be in Macedonia. They're going to give above and beyond. And I'm using that to encourage them to do the same thing. So I sent others ahead so you're prepared. because I don't like the idea of being embarrassed. And if I get there and you're not ready and I've spread your name around the world, how does that look on me? By the way, verse 4, hint, hint, he says, I may bring somebody with me. Now you want to talk about embarrassing. I've been spreading your name around the world that you're this liberal giving congregation, and I bring somebody with me to help me carry the gift, and there's nothing to carry. I can put it in my pocket. I said, don't embarrass me. Get it ready ahead of time. You promised that it was going to be this bountiful thing. I need to make sure that it is. Don't get covetous now. Don't start holding on to what you have because you want it. You've already promised it to somebody else. He said, and by the way, and this is really beautiful. This is that part about he who sows and he who reaps and he who gathers, and even playing field again. He said, you're not going to come up short. Give until it hurts. Give some more like Macedonia did, and God will take care of you. He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. Reminds them again, do it purposefully, do it cheerfully. And then verse 12 through 15, it's really interesting. It's just not just about meeting needs. I'm not asking you just to meet their basic needs where they survive today and don't have anything tomorrow. It's about going beyond that. Now then, said we'd come back to them. Let's go back and get all those, we'll come back to this notes. Because this is the key. Whoops. Repeated it. What all did we file away? Well, we filed away number 1, give as he may prosper. 1 Corinthians 16. We filed away that this is about the poor. Romans 15. That it's about saints, it's about Christians, and it doesn't mean that we're not meeting other needs, but a priority, and that's in all of those texts. We filed away, it's not about what you do not have. We filed away the idea of an even playing field, and we filed away going beyond need. Add it up. Add it up in your head. Think about it. Give as you have prospered, or he gives as he has prospered, or lay it aside as he has prospered. Forever in 2 days, I have heard that taught. Well, that's the idea that I'm going to give in how I have prospered in contrast to last year. I got a raise, so my contribution goes up. I had a good week, my stocks did well, so my contribution goes up. Is that the context? In fact, I'll add it like this. When in Scripture am I ever the measuring stick? Even when we talk about my faith needs to be ahead of where it was last year, who's the measuring stick? It's Christ. All right? What's the measuring stick in Acts 2, Acts 4, Romans 15, 1 Corinthians 16, 2 Corinthians 8 and 9? The poor, those who have less than me. How have I prospered in comparison to those that are in need? Suddenly it's a different standard. And it doesn't have anything to do with whether I got a raise last week or not. It has to do with the fact that Wayne Barrier comes and he says, I've got needy people who need Bibles and need houses and they need transportation, and they're not getting it, and they're your brothers and sisters in Christ, and you're here and they're there. How have you prospered in comparison to them? How are you leveling the playing field? Giving above and beyond, we feel like we might be able to give so that we can raise the standard of living for our brethren. Because what we feel like is supposed to be our standard of living is so far and above what the rest of the world is living in that maybe this is the point where we ought to be shamed. Acts 2, 44 and 45, and all those who had believed were together, had all things in common. The church has descended on Jerusalem. They've baptized 3,000, and guess what? They're not going home. They're not going back to their jobs. They're not going back to their houses. Why? Because the apostles' teaching is in Jerusalem. They have to stay for a while. They need places to live. They need food to eat. They need to be able to take care of their children, and they are dependent upon somebody else to do that for them. So the church is bringing it all together so they can meet all those needs, to the point that if they need to, they're selling their property, they're selling their possessions, and they're sharing it with all so as anyone might have need. And then the passage I referenced in Acts chapter 4, there was not a needy person among them. All who had owners of land or houses would sell them, bring it and lay it at the apostles' feet, the disciples' feet. They'd pass it out, distribute it as they had need. So here's the key. How do I do that? Do you remember where, and it was in 2 Corinthians chapter 9, Paul said, it is not about what you do not have. If it's not about what I do not have, it becomes about what I do have and what they do not have. And suddenly it's an entirely different perspective. Our giving to be done weekly so money is always available for the elders to use to meet these needs is to primarily meet the spiritual and physical needs of those around us. Internationally, locally. Do the elders have a choice to provide a building, fellowship building, electricity, local spiritual needs, materials? Absolutely. As they do, and this is part of the reason we lead with like mission work, we lead with like our youth work, we lead with meeting physical and spiritual needs. As they keep a roof over our head and the HVAC's running, they have to make sure primarily that the needs of others are met first. That's why we have a budget. We were talking about this morning. Technically, you go to Scripture, if it came down to supporting a missionary or us living without air conditioning in the summer, scripturally we turn off the air conditioner and we send the man into the field. So that's what we have to give. Because how many of you want to sit in here in the middle of August with a metal roof up above your head on a Sunday afternoon at 5 o'clock? We come in with the air conditioner running and it's 82 and we complain. Let's cut it off one Sunday in August. It's 102. It's 122. It's 132. I mean, the people in Africa are meeting that way. We can meet that way so that we can meet their spiritual needs. We like for them to keep us warm. We like for them to keep us dry. But we, the church, the individuals who have to purpose in our heart to provide every week, need to make sure that there's enough money they can do both. And they don't have to ask when the need arises. Get really practical. No idea. I have never once sat when the money was counting. I don't know whose names are on a check. I don't know who puts what in there. I have no idea what you budget. What if each one of us just did 10% a week? If I give $100, that's $110. That is one cup of coffee at Starbucks that I gave up for the week. All right, so we take that 10%, and this was last week, whatever the average was. Let's use 5,000 because it's a good even number if we average it out. Each of us does 10%. That's $500 a week extra that the elders have to send into the mission field to meet the needs. 5,000 becomes 500 becomes what? $2,000 a month, $24,000 a year. We've taken on an entire mission work by ourselves, and it costs me a cup of coffee a week. Here's the invitation. Macedonia gave of themselves first. If I'm not doing that, then that's not going to take care of itself as we stand and sing. Have thine affections in hell.